Hey yo, what's good, folks? It's your boy reporting live from the 90s. And I don't know if y'all knew this, but the PlayStation 1 wasn't even supposed to happen. But when it did, it flipped the whole gaming world. It didn't just drop gems, it built culture, created legends, and turned a great box into a part of everyday life for a whole generation. We're running the full story of how PlayStation went from a quiet idea inside of Sony to a worldwide takeover. The behind-the-scenes drama, the hustle, the moments that built gaming, and the rare gems you might not have knew, all woven in. It's no fluff, no hype, just real talk, man, piece by piece. It ain't even nothing else to say. Y'all get ready and let's play. Sony wasn't even in the gaming race at first. They were out here making TVs, Walkmans, and CD players, not consoles. But Ken Kutaragi, an engineer at Sony with an interest in gaming, peeped out his kid was locked in on the NES, and he saw something big in gaming that the higher-ups didn't.
He was fascinated by the growing video game industry, so much so that he bought his daughter a Nintendo Famicom. While watching her play it, he was inspired and became convinced that Sony could create something better.
What's wild is Kutaragi secretly developed a sound chip for the Super Nintendo behind Sony's back, the SPC 700, which ended up giving the SNES that clean, crisp sound that blew NES out the water. When Sony found out, they were heated, but Kutaragi stood on it, fighting to prove gaming was worth Sony's time. That led to Sony and Nintendo linking up to create a CD-ROM add-on for the SNES. A lot of folks don't know that the prototypes of the PlayStation even had a SNES cartridge slot in them, showing just how real the partnership was supposed to be. But then, Nintendo moved grimier than grimy. At CES 1991, Sony pulled up ready to announce the partnership to the world, but Nintendo switched up, publicly announcing that they were partnering with Philips instead, leaving Sony standing there like, what?
Instead of partnering with Sony, they told the world they would be working with Sony's rival, Philips. Sony didn't believe it.
Most companies would have folded, but Sony didn't. Kutaragi was like, bet, I got you, and convinced Sony to take the prototype and turn it into its own console, even if it meant going head-to-head with Nintendo and Sega, who were the kings of the gaming world at the time. And here's the wildest part. Only about 200 Nintendo PlayStation prototypes were ever made before the fallout, and one of them sold for over 300,000 at an auction in 2020, making it one of the rarest gaming collectibles in history. From betrayal and hustle, the PlayStation was born and ready to shake up gaming, whether the industry wanted it or not. After Nintendo tried to play Sony, Ken Kutaragi and his squad didn't fold. They took the prototype and went all in, building a console meant to take over. And it wasn't just about dropping a system, it was about changing the whole approach to gaming. Sony wasn't trying to copy Nintendo and Sega with cartridges. Instead, they bet on CD-ROMs. CDs could hold up to 650 megabytes, letting developers create bigger worlds, drop full-motion videos, and layer in soundtracks that actually hit. That's why games like Final Fantasy VII ended up on PlayStation. Square originally wanted it to be on N64, but needed the CD space Nintendo couldn't give.
Now see the outstanding technical capabilities of Sony's advanced video game system, and how game developers the world over can now create a stunning new generation of interactive entertainment.
In fact, Nintendo was known for locking developers into strict contracts and expensive cartridge production. Sony flipped it, offering better licensing deals and easier development kits, making it way smoother to build for the PlayStation 1. That's why so many third-party studios dipped from Nintendo and pulled up to Sony. On the hardware side, PlayStation was a beast for its time. It was designed to push real-time 3D graphics while being simpler to develop for than the Sega Saturn, which was powerful but a headache for developers to work with.
The PlayStation Custom 3-dimensional graphics hardware is a true polygon system with many special effects as standard. Up to 360,000 flat-shaded polygons per second.
The PlayStation's architecture let games like Tekken and Wipeout show off 3D movement that felt ahead of its time in the mid-90s. Then came in the Tokyo Game Show in 1994, where Sony made their official PlayStation reveal. They weren't pulling up with toy energy, they positioned the PlayStation as cool, leaning into the skate, rave, and street culture energy of the 90s. Their marketing was edgy and direct, aiming at teens and young adults who felt Nintendo was too kiddie and Sega was losing its touch. And here's a cool piece of trivia. The PlayStation startup sound that's burned into everybody's memory was created by Takafumi Fujisawa, who wanted it to sound futuristic and welcoming at the same time, using a layered synth pad over metallic tones. Every time you heard that sound, you knew something was about to go down. Sony wasn't just trying to compete, they were setting up to take the crown, one clean move at a time. When the PlayStation launched in Japan on December 3rd, 1994, it moved units heavy. Over 100,000 consoles sold on day one, showing Sony wasn't just here to test the waters, they were here to make noise. The launch lineup wasn't crazy stacked, but games like Ridge Racer flexed the PS1's 3D power, letting players get that arcade feel at home. While titles like Mahjong Goku Tenjiku quietly filled out the roster, showing the PS1 was down to cater to different tastes while building momentum. But the real takeover started in September 1995 in the US. Sony rolled in with precision, pulling off what's now one of gaming's coldest moments. While Sega priced the Saturn at $399, Sony took to the stage at E3 and Steve Race walked up to the mic like,
$299.
and walked off. No extra speech, no pitch, just a mic drop that told everybody PlayStation was undercutting Sega by a clean 100. And guess what? It worked. The price point combined with PS1's edge made it feel like the console you wanted to have, not just the one your parents picked out for you. Sony's marketing leaned heavy into 90s youth culture, tapping into the energy of skateboarding, electronic music, and late-night vibes that felt more adult than Nintendo's family-friendly image.
Like to be humiliated by women. Here's your dream date. You are not ready.
Early hits like Battle Arena Toshinden, Rayman, and Twisted Metal started showing what the PlayStation could really do. Wipeout came in with its futuristic anti-gravity racing and a licensed EDM soundtrack, which was huge for its time, setting the PS1 apart as the console that actually understood what was cool. And here's a gem. A lot of folks forget that before PlayStation took over, Sony used to make games for the SNES, like the PlayStation game Equinox, published by Sony ImageSoft. It's wild how fast they went from being a support player in gaming to becoming the main event.
I'd like to talk to you about a menace threatening humanity. It's happening right here, in our very homes, and corrupting the lives of our loved ones. Yes, friends, I'm talking about this.
And while Sega stumbled with the Saturn's rushed launch and complex hardware, and Nintendo stuck with cartridges, limiting developers, Sony was racking up third-party support fast. Studios that were tired of Nintendo's tight control and Sega's chaos found a home with Sony, pushing the PS1's library to expand quickly in genres from RPGs to racing to fighting games. The PS1's launch was a statement and a half. And that's why what made the PlayStation really hit wasn't the hardware or the price, it was the games that turned into a culture. The PS1 didn't just get a few good titles, it built a stacked library that hit every genre and made it the console you kept coming back to day after day. In 1997, Final Fantasy VII dropped and it was a wrap. This wasn't just an RPG, it was a full cinematic experience with those iconic FMVs in a world so big it needed 3 discs to fit. Then you had Metal Gear Solid in 1998, which came in and made players realize games could tell deep, layered stories while still being fun as hell. Horror games, Resident Evil, and Silent Hill turned living rooms into haunted houses. Gran Turismo arrived and showed that racing games could be realistic while still being fun. Platformers weren't left out either. Crash Bandicoot and Spyro the Dragon brought bright colors, fun gameplay, and characters that became PlayStation's mascots. Even the demo discs hit different. You'd get them in the gaming magazines and they were like mini holidays, letting you try out upcoming games, watch trailers, and feel like you were part of something bigger. The PS1 was the first gaming console to ship 100 million units worldwide by 2005, a record that shows Sony's gamble had paid off. And by the late 90s, the PlayStation had dominated. Nintendo was still pushing the N64. Sega was trying to keep the Dreamcast alive, but Sony was already looking ahead while still letting the PS1 eat. In 1999, Sony announced the PlayStation 2, but they didn't drop the PS1 cold turkey. Instead, they released a smaller, cheaper PS1 model in 2000, which kept selling like crazy, especially for families and younger gamers stepping into gaming for the first time. Here's something a lot of folks don't realize. Even after the PS2 launched in 2000, the PS1 was still moving heavy units. The PS1 was so popular that it continued to sell well into the early 2000s. And the game support didn't vanish either. Games like Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 and FIFA were still dropping for the PS1 even after the PS2 was in full swing, showing the system's staying power in the market. And what's wild is that the PS1's success set the entire stage for Sony's dominance. The developers who found a home on PS1 stayed with Sony, and the brand loyalty was built, and the PS2 was ready to take all that momentum and run with it, becoming the best-selling console of all time. But the PS1 didn't fade away quietly. It stayed in bedrooms, basements, and living rooms, becoming the second console in many households while the PS2 took center stage. For a lot of people, the PS1 was still the console you booted up when you wanted to run back Tekken 3, Crash Team Racing, or Metal Gear Solid on a chill afternoon. Plain and simple, the PlayStation 1 laid the foundation for everything that came after, proving that Sony wasn't a guest in the gaming world. They were really the home owner. And it's a wrap, yo. This concludes the PlayStation 1 saga. In Part 1 and Part 2, we gave you the hottest games that ever dropped on PS1, and we just gave you the story of how the console and company rose to prominence in the gaming world. From a backroom idea that almost didn't happen, to a betrayal that turned into motivation, to a console that took over living rooms around the world, the PS1 dropped games and built culture. It gave us classics, late night sessions, and moments that still live rent-free in our heads, even when they may have came with rental fees. I'm telling you, man. If you rocked with this video, drop your favorite PS1 memory in the comments. Let's see who had the best PS1 moments. And if you're tapped into gaming history, hit that like, sub to the channel, and turn on the bell so you don't miss what's next. You know we got you covered with your nostalgia fix, man. And until next video, stay winning.